Welcome everyone to Minority and Women-Owned Financial Negotiations. We are having this presented by our good friend Rebecca Schultz, who's been here many, many times, and we love having her here, and Liz Lara Carino. I hope I said that right.
That's
She is going to be discussing with Rebecca everything that you need to know in order to do these, hopefully, the financial negotiations the right way. My name is Judy Weiner. I'm actually the Senior Administrative Specialist here at the North Central Texas Small Business Development Center. We are the leading provider of assistance for small businesses in Cook, Montague, and Denton County. We are grant funded, and this allows us to offer all of our services at no cost to you. Today, like I said, we're doing the financial negotiations for the minority and women-owned businesses. If you can, please put your questions in the chat room. We will go ahead and get to those at the end, unless Rebecca or Liz wants to have those read at any time during their presentation. What we know about Rebecca Schultz is she has been helping business owners to access money and financial education for over 25 years, which I still find hard to believe looking at you. She is the founder and executive loan consultant for Cinerlock Funding. And at this time, I'm going to present it or hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Judy. Thank you so much for inviting me to come back. And I brought a good friend who really helps complement this conversation in the best possible way. Plus, you guys are just going to have a good time, right? So hopefully you laugh a lot. We dive into details a lot. And I like to think that we have the conversation in a slightly different manner than what you've probably heard before. So I like to think that that's going to be challenging. All right. So here we go. My name is Rebecca Schultz. I do have 25 years. I promise you I have 25 years in the whole lending conversation. Spent the last 15 plus years dedicated to commercial lending, helping business owners understand and access capital. So I'm bringing that experience along with my own entrepreneurial experience into the conversation today to really tackle something that I feel is really important, right? And that is understanding financial negotiation, so understanding the power of money, right? Especially as it has recently intermingled with this conversation about minority and women-owned businesses. All right, so the agenda is very simple today, right? But we're weaving it all together. We're going to talk about money beliefs and the power that we give it, right? I love talking about money, right? And I understand that intrinsically, each of us have different stories, different concepts of money, right? So to really get into the negotiation conversation, which Liz is going to help us with, we need to understand what money means to us, or more importantly, what the power that we're giving to money in the conversation. Then we're going to go ahead and frame what I call the problem, right? This is the current moment in time. There's a lot happening in the news. I'm going to call the elephant in the room. We're going to talk about it, right? We're going to see what is happening in that conversation and different viewpoints to the conversation. And then we're going to talk about the view from the lending desk. Right, so this is the access to capital conversation right here. The lending desk. What are those lenders thinking? What's happening? What's their filter of understanding around this whole financial negotiation conversation? And importantly, as it comes to minority and women-owned businesses. All right, so we're going to try to understand that perspective. And then we're going to get Liz Laura Carreno to come in and talk about soft skills, right? How does that come into the conversation with negotiation? And then she's going to walk us through not only the importance of that, but improving those soft skills, understanding how that filters through the negotiation conversation, and then we'll take the question and answers. All right, so with that, everybody ready? Okay, good, because I love talking about money. So money beliefs, right? Really, and the power that we give it personally is a big part of going into any type of discussion or communication. So we're going to break this down in a slightly different way, right? I'm going to have you guys answer a question. I want you to answer a question about your experience. All right, so I want you to think about a time when you were a small child. What lessons did your family or environment teach you about money? All right. So again, this is you as a small child. You know, what lessons did your family or those around you teach you about money? Just give yourself just a second. I just want you to reflect about that, because ultimately, right, when we talk about the power that we give that money conversation, it comes from a very deep place. Now, I'm not going to drag you through that deep place right now, okay? What I'm going to do for you is in the handouts that will be coming to you through the program, there's going to be a money exercise. I call it the money belief exercise. It's going to take this question and it's going to help you explore the power or the role that money plays in your life currently. Right? It's going to explore the history with money. You'll be able to kind of maybe identify some common trends, right? And again, all of this prepares you to understand how you're entering that negotiation for that financial conversation, right? And you're going to truly, hopefully, allow yourself to see the power that you give that money conversation. All right. So when we talk about money, and we talk about money beliefs, we have to understand what I mean by that concept. All right. So a belief is that attitude, right, or something to which we um, are looking or filtering the world through, and we believe it to be true. Now, philosophers use the term belief to refer to attitudes about the world that could be true or false, right? But it's something that we adopt in that belief, and it could be true or false, but we believe it to be true. Now, I just took that from Wikipedia. You can go look it up yourself. But when we take money and we put that word belief in front of it, we're basically saying there's a specific attitude about money that could be true or false, but we're giving it this framework that we're going into a conversation. Now, your core money beliefs actually are formed by the age of 5, right? Now, when I say this, hopefully that should make you feel a little astounded, right? We probably don't have lots of memories from early in our childhood, but just like we were learning to tie our shoes or learning our alphabet, right? We were taking information and training from around us, and we were forming this core belief of how we interact with the world, how we negotiate with the world with money, right? And so what happens with any core belief, right, we can keep on operating our life with those same core beliefs without really looking at them and realizing that that's shading the conversations, it's shading how we feel and how we're interacting with the world, especially the world of money. All right, so just something interesting to think about as we go into negotiation, right? I want you to examine your money beliefs. That's why I did the exercise. I'm going to challenge you to do that so you can get really clear with how you're showing up in conversations, right? I just want you to understand what is potentially showing up as a filter for your conversations, right? As adults, we have the choice to choose how we believe, right? And really explore something that's not working for us, right? And then re-choose or reframe that conversation and reframe how we show up in conversations. And so I'm going to encourage you to look at that handout that's coming out. It only takes 20 minutes, right? But if you're interested to see how you're showing up in conversations, or maybe the power that you're giving money in these conversations, and you want to just make sure how that all lines up, you'll check out the exercise and maybe reframe that conversation. Because at the end of the day, right, if we realize that how we're showing up in this negotiation isn't really how we want to show up, right? Maybe there's ways that we can improve, or we can be stronger, right? Or we can come more prepared to a conversation, then you can change those beliefs, right? You can select new role models, select new conversations, right? New ways to frame conversations. And that really comes into a step of change. And this is no final understanding of change. I'm just giving you some suggestions here, ideas to think about, right? You want to typically define the problem, right? Or define the challenge. For many individuals, that's accomplishing a specific goal sometimes that they're setting out on that journey to accomplish. Maybe they're getting ready to negotiate a really big lease, right? Or maybe they're getting ready to negotiate funding for that business or investor capital, whatever that challenge or goal that you want to accomplish. You got to review that from multiple viewpoints, right? And Liz will talk about the power of being able to really dissect the difficult conversations you're about to have or negotiations you're about to have. And having a viewpoint, a well-rounded viewpoint, is going to be critical to that conversation. All right, so understand how you show up in that conversation. Right? How do you look? Are you prepared? Right? What ideas are you putting out there that you could potentially negotiate? Right? Think about that. And then more importantly, before you get to the conversation, you understand how can you improve? Right? What are those things that are holding you back from being extremely clear, decisive in a conversation, and really giving the type of presentation that you're wanting to give, right? Or really accomplishing the goal. We can even take it to the end result, right? What might be changing the conversation from you accomplishing it. All right. More importantly, you want feedback. Right? Feedback is critical. Getting honest, true feedback is really important. You are in touch and connected to a fantastic group of individuals, right, business advisors that are helping you get the best possible feedback, especially in financial negotiations. And that's going to be your Sbdc advisors and your resources there, right? They will help you get that non-biased feedback to make sure that you're fully prepared for going out there into these kind of financial negotiations. More importantly, it takes doing the work, right? Doing the work takes all kinds of preparation. We'll talk a little bit about that, right? And that's going to be different for every person on this call, right? You might be an extremely prepared individual. You might have a fantastic package for funding. You might know exactly what you want, and you might be miles ahead of other individuals that don't have that type of clarity, right? But at the end of the day, we all have to do our work. All right. So hopefully that was interesting. Make sure that you're remembering to throw the questions into the chat box so that we can get to them. But for this particular section, I'd like to end with this little quote. And I love this quote because it's so true. All right, the only way to get what you really want is to let go of what you don't want. Right? So many times we focus on achieving and getting what we want in our negotiations. We don't often see what we are maybe holding on to that's holding us back, right? And again, that could be as simple as maybe some unwanted or unexplored beliefs. It could be something as not understanding fully how we're negotiating something, right? Maybe negotiation points. At the end of the day, to have that well-rounded perspective, right? Being willing to let go of things that aren't serving us well and to be open to what we really want to accomplish, right? Good negotiation quote. All right. So, now that we got that out of the way, right? Let's talk about framing the problem, right? Let's identify the current challenge. Now, when I see that title, call minority and women-owned businesses in this financial negotiation, I can't help but think about what's happening in the news today. All right, so I'm going to bring this up here. Here's the headline news. All right, I'm going to give you a couple of examples, right? But the Justice Department is expanding what they call redlining investigation efforts. Right, this was posted on October 22nd, just a couple weeks ago. All right, this was through the Associated Press. Our Attorney General, Merrick Garland, announced plans to combat lending discrimination. All right, and these are quotes directly from the articles which I have provided to you as part of the handouts, right? Just give you all the information that I'm seeing and talking about. All right, lending discrimination runs counter to the fundamental promises of our economic system. Our Attorney General Merrick Garland says, in preparation, when people are denied credit simply because of their race or national origin, their ability to share in our nation's prosperity is all but eliminated. All right, so this is his promise to us that he, meaning the Justice Department, will spare no resource to ensure that the federal fair lending laws are vigorously enforced and that the financial institutions providing equal opportunity for all Americans to obtain credit. All right, so I'm going to just let that sit with you, right? This is the news. This is what we're seeing. right? And I love this little political commercial came up, right? Love it, because here we are talking about the infrastructure bill that's, balling around in politics right now. And we're talking about equality, right? There's some disparity there, right? And we see that the bridge to equality is kind of falling apart. And it's got all these really good current issues being mixed, right? Lost in the conversation. But remember, in all negotiations, there's two parts to that bridge, right? There's always two stories being told. And so as we're going into more current news, right, this is another headline, right? It says racial bias skewed small business owner relief lending, study shows. All right, this was actually published in the New York Times back on October 11th. It says black business owners were more likely to get Paycheck Protection Program loans from online lenders than from banks, according to new research. It also says it was taken aback by the striking disparity, which was surprising and unexpected fact, and they wanted to figure out why, said this Sabrina T. Howell, who's an assisting professor of finance in the New York University Stern Business School. And she was the leading author to that paper. Now, right, we can't avoid the elephant in the room. There has been some, really compelling cases to say that there is a difference when minorities and women business owners are going into this financial negotiation conversation, right? We can see evidence to that. But remember, there's two sides of a bridge, there's two sides of a story. And my job is to help you fully see the conversation, right? So let's kind of flip the script here and see, what are they looking at? What is that conversation? And maybe what are the lenders focusing on in this conversation? Right? We want to be well-rounded in this conversation. So this is the demographics from the PPP program that last article spoke about. Right? So you can see they're trying to see who's getting funding, who's getting the support. SBA has divided up the feedback or responses, right? Really interesting conversation. But not only are these, what SBA is looking at to be the fact, I just want to point out what the lenders are trying to hone in on is that there's a lot of unknown to this conversation. You see, not everybody reported their race, ethnicity, right, gender, right? There's a lot of unknown. In fact, the unknown is greater than the known. And so what a lot of the lenders are saying in response to the concerns of redlining or discrimination is that it's not completely defined, right? They're not trying to be overtly biased, and I'll get to that in a minute, what these lenders are looking at, what they're trying to do. There really is a deeper conversation happening, and I'm not going to weigh on one end or the other, right? Our goal is to be in the middle, right? To build that bridge in that conversation, but to understand each side. All right, so there's a good conversation happening there. But what is going to happen, and this is my forecasting for you, right? What I know and what I'm seeing written on the walls is that there is going to be this race to remove bias. There's going to be really a lot of effort to try to help lenders be held to a higher level for fair and equal lending practices. Right, it's already out there in the law, right? They're not supposed to discriminate. They're not supposed to be biased, right? There's going to be new measures. We already know, we heard the Attorney General, right, talk about it. New measures to reporting to determine stronger lending practices. There's going to be strong and swift repercussion for any offenders for the fair and equal practices. And in my prediction, because they already cited and saw that the online lenders, the ones that weren't looking physically at the people, that were using information that was non-biased in decision making through AI, right? We're going to see an uptick in this online application systems, right, that are really trying to remove any personal bias from the conversation. Okay, we already saw that worked. I can see our whole financial system really leaning in that direction to try to be more fair. All right, so What that really means is that this whole negotiation conversation, it's changing. It's changing live on the ground, right? And more importantly, you and me, we have a voice in this conversation, right? We have power. We have the ability to use and understand this in a deeper way. And I feel that we're going to use those voices, or I'm encouraging you to use your voices to really understand and cultivate new lending processes, right? My concern is that if we go strictly online and there's no personal interaction, which would be hard to do in the lending world, but let's say they accomplish that through AI, right? That means everything that we know about lending, the investment conversation, the financial negotiation conversation could potentially change, right? New conversations have to happen. And we really need to understand how we're showing up in the conversation, whether we're having it face to face or we're having these financial negotiations on paper, right? Or electronically, right? A little scary, right? It's a little different. It's all changing for businesses in the future. All right. So this is where I'm going to say, all right, so we understand the conversation, right? We frame the problem. We understand what's happening, and there's a lot of change that's about to take place. It puts the weight on this whole financial negotiation, right? Even more so than what it was before, even 2 years ago, right? Now I'm going to share a little bit of my lending experience with you, all right? Because again, we see what's happening in the news. We might come into this conversation with a personal understanding. We respect all understanding, but what's happening on the lender side? What are the lenders talking about, right? What is their stance? Well, I can tell you from all my many years of lending, right, that in Lender Training 101, they are, and I will say professional lenders are trained to be fair and equal in lending. They try to go into these conversations without bias. Now, there's been a lot of conversation about bias and subconscious bias. I'm not going to go there, right? But I'm just going to say they are trained not to do it. Whether it happens or it leaks in, right? That's a whole nother conversation. But I want you to understand that racial bias is not a new topic for bankers, right? They for many decades have tried to remove this in training and in conscious lending, right? There's regulations that have been placed out there to protect communities from this redlining or not lending to certain groups or areas, right? But clearly there's a challenge in being able to make this happen and to clearly make it known. And I'm just going to be really honest. It's a very difficult conversation for these lenders, right? Because there's clearly a divide in what is best for financial investment, right, in monetary terms, and what they're calling redlining. And it's a gray area. So, what is this gray area? Why is this a challenge, right? Because typically, lower income communities, they want lower dollar amounts. And from a financial standpoint, from banks, lower dollar amounts mean lower amounts of benefit. Still the same amount of energy, but lower benefit. So, if you were a business owner and you were going into a conversation and you were going to get paid half of what you would get paid from another customer, right? It changes the conversation, right? You have to spend the same amount of money, but you're getting half of the reward. That's essentially the conversation that banks are forced to confront on an ongoing basis in these conversations. And that also means that for the risk that they're taking lower collateral values, which typically means a higher risk, right? And then maybe they're dealing with clients that have maybe less ability to repay back certain loans, right? Because there's lower dollar amounts, right? There's challenges. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying that they have a reason for doing it, but I'm calling it what it is. I'm talking about the elephant in that room, right? There's challenges that we need to come to terms on. But I can assure you that the lender goals are very, very clear, all right? Lenders want to be good stewards of the money that's been entrusted to them. The last thing they want to do is to take grandma's pension check, right, and to gamble it away, right? They can't do that. There's protocol, their safety and soundness. There's regulations around them that mean that they have to follow certain guidance. They have to be good stewards, right? But at the same time, they're a business too, so they have to be profitable. So how do they balance that, right? They want to and strive to be positive contributors to local communities, right? That is literally a goal for them to check off on that list. If they are lending, are they doing good in that community, or are they doing harm? Right? Understanding both sides of the conversation helps you understand where they may shy away from certain conversations that they could possibly even, you know, do any harm in a conversation. Right? But they want to provide good quality jobs. Right? So they want to reach out in the community and do what a lot of business owners want to do. They provide opportunities to members of that community in the form of the loans and the financial support. Right? And they want to provide financial education to all. That is every community lender that I've ever spoken to, any lender I've ever spoken to, that is really what they hire to. That is their goal. All right. Now, whether they achieve the goal or they don't achieve the goal, I'm not laying any kind of decision on that, right? I'm just telling you what they train to and what their actual goals are. So let's talk about redlining, right? Because remember, redlining is not a goal, and redlining is that term where they're not lending to all ethnic, low income, or minority communities, right? That's where they are not going into those areas for whatever reason, right? Lenders do not want to show racial bias. They really don't, right? Lenders don't want to lend, or lenders want to lend, okay, to anyone who qualifies and who represents low risk, right? They don't care. Money is money to them, right? It's all green, right? So if they can find qualified borrowers, they want to lend to them, right? And lenders will work with and for people that want to improve and want to qualify for the loan and will be good contributors to the economy, right? They're looking for those type of characteristics. And lenders are open books, right? I can't tell you a single lender that I've ever run across that isn't willing to have an honest conversation and to tell you or to coach you or to guide you on what they think or what they believe could support you, right? I think of them as really unpaid advisors in many respects, if you find a good one, right? And so they want to do loans. They get paid to do loans, right? So if they can help you, if they can reduce risk and give you ideas or tips, they typically will want to improve the odds for themselves and for their institutions. So where I kind of tie this all together to that bridge picture that we saw, right? The equality there, is that really to understand and to kind of bridge those redlining concerns, it's going to take communication. It's going to take understanding both sides of the conversation, right? Understanding where we can all meet in the middle. And that's going to take a little bit of work. All right, so when we talk about doing the work, right, when we talk about communication, I'm going to just go straight into some of that communication that is a little bit less hard, right? Less defined, right? And I think about these type of skill set, this type of conversation happening in an interview, right? I'm not saying it's limited to an interview. I'm just saying that I want you to think back to interview experiences when we try to understand the communication that happens, right? That we may not be 100% conscious that we're bringing into the conversation or the negotiation, right? But we're going to think about it in the form of an interview. Right? It could be so much more, but we'll get through the interview conversation first. So I want you to just kind of close your eyes. I'm going to walk you through this here. I want you to remember a past interview that went well, exceptionally well, right? Could be many years ago, could have been just yesterday. Just think about that interview. It doesn't have to be any type of interview, just that conversation or communication that you're having. All right? How did you prepare for that conversation? What did you think about that? Did you do a lot of preparation? Did you go over talking points? Did you clearly define what you wanted out of that conversation or interview? All right. how well did you communicate your ideas or what you needed out of that conversation? Did you do a good job picturing that for somebody, right? Making it very crystal clear what you needed, right? Could you tell during that interview that the other party was positive and that they were hearing you clearly and you were sharing your message, right? Was there some type of feedback that you could gather? I want you to think about the result of that interview. Right? How did that interview end? If you didn't get exactly what you wanted in that interview, that doesn't mean that it was bad, right? But if it left a positive experience for you, I want you to think about that interaction, that communication that was happening. Okay. All right. Now let's do the opposite here. Let's think about a negative interview experience. Let's think about the skill sets, the conversation, the negotiation that was happening in a negative experience, right? So think about a past interview that didn't go well. Okay, so what happened, right? How did you spend your time before that conversation, before that interview? All right. Did you communicate thoroughly in that conversation? Were you allowed to communicate thoroughly? Did you take that ability? Right. What were the signs that the interview wasn't going well? Right. What were those signs? And then what did you do after that interview? Okay. Did you make notes? Did you change anything? Right. What did you do? Did you cry? Maybe you cried, right? I don't know. Right? Did this experience shape or change your next interview experience? Right? Did you take feedback? Did you try to craft something different with the responses that you received? Again, this is not for you to share, right? This is for you to contemplate because this is where you take your own experience, right? And you think about that kind of financial negotiation, that type of conversation, the communication that you're having, right? So if you're to think about those two experiences, what would be the words of advice you'd give yourself for that next interview? And I want you to think about that, right? Because what if you were going for money? Right? What if you're going for a financial negotiation? Maybe it's the lease, maybe it's with a lender, maybe it's with an investor. Knowing what you know personally or experience personally, what would you do different? Okay. So when you take a look at those conversations, right, that skill set, that's going to lead you into Liz's section, right, which is going to be the soft skills, right, and negotiation. Liz? Please stop sharing and you take over.
Yeah, let me open this up here.
Okay, I can see it, but it's not in presentation mode yet. It's still in regular mode.
Let me get this. Let me just reduce the screen here. Hold on. There we go. Are we there?
Yep, perfect.
Hi, everybody. I'm Liz Lara Carreño, and I'm currently the Director of Outreach and Marketing for the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program in the Greater Houston market. In working with Rebecca, I've had the opportunity to work with many business owners locally and nationally. And we have been very fortunate, and it is a compliment when you have a business owner that reaches out to you amidst the challenges when they have either received a loan or their loan has been declined or there's been issues and challenges. So when a business owner calls you up and they said, I didn't get it, I don't know what I'm going to do, they didn't like me, and then it leads to a personal, statements and, all kinds of things that go through their head. And, for us is that means that there's a trust factor with us, that they're able to have that conversation with us. And then second, there is also, it allows us to provide some clarity. Now, as Rebecca was taking you through that process on the financial side, a couple of things when she talked about what the goals were for the lending, and if you see me look to my left, it's because I've got my slides put up here, so I have to look over and glance, is that in the, like when the PPE loans came out, all of these loans that were out there and the financial institutions, they get paid for making these loans. However, they also have caps on industries, and that's one of the things where you might find one financial institution that is capped out at providing loans for restaurants, and they may still have funding for other industries, but there are some industries where the caps are, and they need to somehow find a balance for that portfolio within their institutions. Rebecca, am I correct in that statement? Rebecca?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. So you're exactly right, Liz. Sometimes decisions from the lending desk doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want to lend. It just means there's outside factors that are keeping them from lending at that moment, which could be concentration caps, right? It could be internal factors. They just don't have the skill set to accurately lend in that. So there's all kinds of reasons why lending may not happen.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. So a couple of things when we were putting this, and we use the puzzles, um, to really just kind of address that there's a number of things that are taking place, variables that are impacting why the loan happened, why it didn't happen, what happened during the conversation, that transactional conversation. And so we do bring up the soft skills, and I love Rebecca because Rebecca's really good at let's define what these are. And so in soft skills, things that are desired in all professions because we use them. It's critical thinking, problem solving, professional writing, digital literacy. It's teamwork, professional attitude, work ethic, career management. There is an aspect of this in almost every single area in which we function. So it doesn't matter what industry and whether you're an entrepreneur, student, professional, it's all applicable. And being able to recognize what those are and the impact that they have. Some of us are better at some than others. And with years or with acknowledgement and recognition, you're able to really hone those skills to work to your benefit. The ability to do a presentation, storytelling, that professional attitude that really reflects in the behavior patterns that you have, in the manner in which you seek, in the manner in which you, solve any issues or challenges that come up. So that's something to consider, and something for you to really think about as to what those look like for you. Let's get to the next one here. So the top 20 that were identified were create the environment to have crucial conversations. That's a real important piece for me. This is really probably one of the number one challenges for individuals in various professional or business owner roles is the ability to take a look at how am I going to have this conversation if I am so uncomfortable with that. There's two resources that I really like to use for that: crucial conversations and crucial confrontations. The ability for complex problem solving. I'm not a big fan of the word problem. I say issue, challenge, obstacle. I think part of it sales is the minute you say it's a problem, it's a problem. So how do we address it before it even gets to that? So you begin to take those steps, and it's much easier to go after a hill than it is a mountain before it becomes a mountain. Creativity and critical thinking, being able to think beyond maybe what those guidelines or restrictions are. People management, coordinating with others, emotional intelligence, picking up those cues that Rebecca was talking about while those conversations were taking place. The conversations lend itself to another direction that maybe you said, okay, why are we going down this path? Maybe there were some unanswered questions. Judgment and decision making, service orientation, negotiations, and cognitive flexibility. So that ability to be able to to jump from one conversation to another without really tapping into that emotional aspect. Remember, this is a transactional conversation that you're having. So our ability to manage, the list of these items here. So when Rebecca talked a little bit about the power of money, the power that we give it, because everybody has a different power, reflex, and opinion when it comes to money, is that if you're out there seeking these loans, then it's usually either for growth or that you need that, either to cross this bridge until things get better, which we've had many of our business owners experience during COVID. And so you're already under a great deal of stress and you're thinking, okay, I need to get this money. And sometimes that stress really impacts our cognitive flexibility. So it will tap into your emotional, it will tap into your judgment and decision making. And for us to be able to go outside when we talk about coordinating with others is that there's an answer in here somewhere. I've turned in my applications and my numbers. I'm looking for a yes. And maybe you're thinking that's the only answer. Well, the opportunity that you get when you're dealing either with financial institutions or with other people that you may have surrounded yourself with to advise you is that you just can't see that answer because you are under a great deal of stress, or you're so close to the issue and the challenge that you can't see that perspective of what the other options or opportunities or resources. And so we somehow have tied everything to that one yes, and we allow other things to become involved in that. So critical thinking sometimes will go out of the window. And so we really need to be aware of that, because that's really going to manifest itself when we begin communicating, especially when questions are being asked. Now, remember, almost in any process, everybody turns in applications, whether it's for a job, you turn in a resume, whether it's for school, you're turning in an application, whether it's for a financial institution. They've not been to your house. They've not been to your business, even if you've had a checking account with them for 10 years. So now this one-on-one is to answer questions about that business opportunity or why you're asking for that funding, questions that need to be answered so that they're able to make that final decision. Not it's about you, whether I like you or not. But I will say this, anybody who speaks like Rebecca has that way of just calming everyone down. And so I always say, if you've got financial issues, you need to talk to Rebecca, because she'll somehow take you to heaven with those words and you'll get that yes. So when we talk about some of the soft skills and entrepreneurial success, they are crucial. They are crucial when it comes to building relationships, whether they're going to be with your internal customers, which are your employees, or your external customers, which are your clients, or they're going to be your partners, like the financial institutions. Successful entrepreneurs repay their loans by having those conversations, and there's nothing, to hide. One of the things that, that I said earlier that I consider, when somebody calls me and says, listen, I'm in trouble and I need to talk this out with you. Okay, so there's a trust factor there. I'm not there to pass judgment. I'm there to listen, and I'm going to ask questions from curiosity, because I need to better understand how you got there and how we need to get you back on track. So, really just kind of understand what that process is, demonstrating your ability to communicate, thinking critically. And, once again, we go back to being able to demonstrating your ability to be successful in that business. So strong skills are important, and improving those soft skills, regardless of your race, sex, orientation, national origin, or economic status. Everyone has that ability, and it's just being able to recognize what your strengths are and what they are not, so that it's an area where you can either step back from, or that it just becomes a flag for you that says, okay, I'm going down a path I'm not comfortable with. I need to think about how I'm going to respond to the following without letting my emotions become involved in this, because it may impact how I answer. So on the communicating, on improving some of your soft skills, the two areas that I put in here after Rebecca talked about the importance about the soft skill aspect, was the things that I wanted you to be aware of. You know, when I do something, I said, you know what, this recipe worked really great today, or the class I taught today went really well, but I'm going to be better tomorrow when I do it again because of what I learned today. So I always tell folks, don't be a victim, be a good student. And with that, you know, as part of your experience, what can I do the next time that I have this conversation with a financial institution? What went well and what didn't go well? And it's very easy to get into that victim mentality. But if I'm a good student and I take note of everything that happened, it's kind of debriefing yourself. Were my numbers not where they needed to be? Did I not explain what my new concept or the need for that particular funding that's going to buy new capital equipment because of this diversification that I'm doing within my company? So that's really one of the things that you want to take a look at. So it is important for you to keep track of what those experiences are and how you can improve upon them for the next time. So a little bit about body language. You can tell I'm a little bit of old school when it comes to communication, you know, because mine goes back to Professor Albert Morabian when he talks about the communication and the impact that it has. So even though words are only 7%, voice tones 38%, facial and body language 55%. You know, Rebecca said earlier, when you're meeting one-to-one, unless things take over AI, you're going to be having these one-on-one conversations. And I always tell my business owners, I said, you know, tell me about your business, and I need you to do it in the most efficient and effective manner. And that's going to want me wanting to hear more. And only you can tell me because this is your business. So although I'm listening for the words, it's how you're telling me. Um, one of the examples I said, you know, how many of you are married? How many of you go home and say, I love you, honey, versus I love you, honey? Big difference, same words, but it's how you actually communicate them. So when somebody is talking to me with passion about this diversification, this new industry that they're about to take their company into, and I see that love and that they're committed and they're ready to take that down. You know, it's a big difference versus I need the money and I need it now. It's a great deal of stress here. So let's kind of break this down of what this money is and why you need it now. Because I need to get to the end, to the part of why this communication is coming across this way. So that communication also lends itself to the relationship. Business is about relationships. So if you are meeting with a financial institution, whether it's the financial bank that you've been with for the last 10 years, or it's a new one because of maybe something that they're offering, new lending opportunities for the businesses in your community, you know, am I looking for a short-term relationship? Am I looking for a long-term relationship? It's not any different than, you know, with any other external client or internal client. And how you approach this. I'm about to explain my new business venture and the need. I'm about to explain that there is a gap in my income and the importance of this loan and how it will allow my company to continue, you know, for the next 60 days while I wait for payment from other companies or whatever the issue may be. But at least I'm sitting here in a calm state and I know why I need the money, and there's nobody else that can explain it better than me. But it is having those factual informations versus emotional responses that will take you through and will enhance what you've already submitted in your application. One of the next pieces that I have is I always tell our business owners or individuals, doesn't matter whether you're negotiating for salary or you're looking for funding, RFPs. I said, you know, make a list against old school. Draw a big line in the center, and it's you, and it's versus whether it's a vendor, whether it's a financial institution, or whoever the other individual is that's going to be on the other side of the table. What are your interests and what are the bank's interests? So Rebecca took you to a little bit about what those financial institutions are going to be looking for. and that they are paid to get loans. But because you got to know, where else is that? Where else can I go? What else can the bank do for me if it's not with this particular request? Discuss the issues to negotiate, whether it is the amount, whether it is the payment options. So those are the things that you want to really begin to make a list of. And when I say list, I'm talking about 1 to 10. If you can get 5 out of there, that's great. Discuss the alternatives and the options. Sometimes we become so close to the issue and the challenge or the amount that we're looking for that we're not looking at anything else. And sometimes it's best for it's usually beneficial that somebody else around us can take a look at that and say, did you consider this or this or this or this? So it's leaving that conversation open or inviting that conversation for options and alternatives, not just here's what I need and that's it, take it or leave it. Because it really doesn't put the person on the other side in a place that allows them to negotiate. BATNA. BATNA is probably one of my number ones in that it's the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And that many times they will come in with that one figure in mind, that one request, and nothing else. You should go in there with no less than 5 to 10. And that goes back to the alternative and options. What is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement? If I don't get the 1 million, or okay, I'll make it realistic, the 50,000 that I am asking for, what's the next thing that I can ask for? Especially if I've got a relationship with this particular institution. So make that list of what that possible alternative could be if I'm not going to get that $50,000 request in terms of a loan. And really just go through that. And you also want to consider what are some of the other currencies that are available there that this financial institution can provide that I've not even thought of. And then finally, once again, what is the relationship? What is the desired outcome? Because at the end of the day, do I want this to be a short-term or a long-term relationship? Meaning that I want to continue with this financial institution. So my communication style, my request, it should all play as part of my negotiation checklist, especially when it comes to having these conversations. And really doing my best to leave my emotion out of this as much as I possibly can. It can be an emotional request because, as I said, some folks are so close to it that if they don't get this, then they think that they're not going to get anything. And that's when I always tell folks is that you need to surround yourself with your own cool kids table, folks that can advise you and are able to look for an answer that maybe you're not able to see at that time. I think the final slide is the soft skills improvement plan. Be very clear in what it is that you want to achieve. Make that list of, I want the following. And it could be the variation of what that number one request was of 50,000. But if I don't get 50,000, what are the things that I can get that I could seek other options for? What is it going to take for me to actually achieve that desired goal? That may mean moving to another financial institution, possibly looking at 2 or 3 or 4 others. Create a complete loan investment package, communicating everything possible. Be as clear, be as honest, be as upfront. Again, this is your business. This is your financial future, and nobody can tell the story better than you. Work with your Sbdc advisors. And when they give you that feedback, I need you to tell me why this happened. It's not about judgment. It's about better understanding so that they know how to move forward. Because, past behaviors are predictors of future performance is what we usually use when we're looking to hire somebody. People have patterns of behavior. So I need to understand there's a couple of decisions that were made here. And I need to know why they were made that got you into this, and what can we do so that they don't get you back into that situation again if we do move forward. Practice makes perfect. Role play, give your pitch. I encourage that always, so that people become comfortable saying these things out loud. They're really good at saying them in their head, but when it comes out, how do I say it without having that emotion attached to it? Like, please give me the money. It's like, I need the financing for the following, and being able to coach somebody to have that conversation comfortably. Um, and then believe people want to help you. You know, some folks will immediately want to say they don't like me because I'm a woman, they don't like me because I'm Latin, they don't like me because whatever it is I sell or product and service I provide. We can come up with all kinds of things, and sometimes that's when business owners get in their own heads and they become their own worst enemies. Uh, you want to assume the innocence of everyone. When you walk into an SBDC, they want to help you. But if they ask the tough questions and that you don't want to answer, you know, again, you've got to be upfront and honest so that they can find that path to take you in that direction. Yep, and I think that's it. I don't know if there's any questions that I can.
Well, thank you so much, Liz. We appreciate that very much, and really good insight on some things. If you have any questions, everybody, if you would please just drop them in the chat box if you're not comfortable with turning your mic on and asking yourself, and I'll be happy to reiterate them. I do have a couple of things that you brought up that I'd like a little bit of elaboration on, that some questions that popped up in my mind, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You were talking about soft skills, especially, and relationships. I think relationships have changed a lot compared to the days whenever I started off in business anyway. And I think that the importance of those relationships is still very good. But you mentioned one thing that stood out to me, which was your ability to communicate. And do you think that for a young entrepreneur, for example, that may not have the right terminology, would it behoove them to learn some what I call lender lingo? And if so, where would they go to try to learn some of that?
You know, I think that when you're talking about the young person, it's like, oh my God, is there anything that you can't Google? You know, is there anything that you can't find under SBA, SBDC, you know, SCORE? I think one of the things that all three of them have done in light of COVID is you guys have really amped up your education, your libraries, and you know, a number of financial institutions are also providing this information on their sites so that they better understand, because banks want you to come in better prepared. You know, I always tell my business owners, I said, if you are standing in front of your financial institution saying, I hope I get this loan, hope is not a plan. You know, you need to come in better prepared. And I mean, so there's really not, I think your financial institutions, Federal Reserve, there's a number of those that have been provided by some of the past SBDCs where they can just kind of find this language or understanding the process of lending, so that they know that it doesn't always happen overnight. I mean, now it's much quicker, but there is that process where you can, it's kind of like how legislation is written. You now know what that process looks like. It's the same thing with lending. You know, there is that process. This is what it looks like, and these are the steps. And the final piece is probably that one-on-one interview. But I think more than anything, I don't necessarily think they need to come in with all of the lingo. I think what's important for them is to come in and just have that very honest and candid conversation about their business and where they want to go.
Thank you. I think that's really good information. And thank you for mentioning the fact that the SBDC and the SBA have really stepped it up, because we've noticed a big initiative and push for education, and having wonderful people like yourself and of course Rebecca to help us navigate these waters and to be better as advisors as well as business owners. So if anybody has any, go ahead.
Great job.
Oh, thank you. If anybody has any questions, I haven't seen anybody drop any in at the moment. But that's probably because you guys explain things really well, and it was a lot of information to filter. But I do like this about the cool kids table too. I'm just going to mention that. You said surround yourself with your own cool kids table, and I think that's extremely important.
You-
And
I
I'm
think that
not sure who to have.
one of the things that I always tell our business owners is that uh, SBDC, SBA, and SCORE. There's only so much that the program that I'm with, we can't take care of everyone, and so you've got a lot of that information there, and they should be part of that cool kids table, because I think depending on what your learning is, meaning that I'm the kind that I need to go in here and I need to read it first before I have a conversation with anyone. But when it comes to individuals, you create your own cool kids table, and in there, it's not any different than it's like the kitchen table. You're surrounding yourself with people that you trust, that want the best for you. And they're not there to pass judgment. They're there to look at things from a perspective in which you apparently cannot see, uh, because you are just so close to that particular program or issue or that challenge. So it could be somebody who's in another business, in a different industry, somebody from a financial, but someone that you're not, people that you're comfortable saying, here's where I am, and if I don't get this RFP or this loan, I'm not going to make payroll in 60 days. And that's a very big thing for a business owner to just come right out and tell you. So we're like,
Absolutely.
okay, let's take a look at what's happening, and let's take a look at how you got here, so that we can figure out where that gap and why that gap was created, and it doesn't happen again. Let's make sure that mechanism is in place, and then let's find a solution so that we make sure that you're open in the next 60 days. So, and I think that's what we are. We can be the best resource of new revenue streams that they may not have thought of, and new uh, resources, for funding. I know some folks that will take one day out of each week and do nothing but sign up for the, funding opportunities, contest. I mean, you've got so many right now. I mean,
Sure.
that's a job right there, and I cannot even begin to tell you the ones that said, "Oh, I got $2,500 because I registered for this," or "I got $5,000 here." Had you not taken the time to do it, that's when I know you're hungry and you're willing to go out and get it. So it just takes a little bit of time.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your insight today. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Liz Laura Carreño as well as Rebecca Schultz. We're happy to have them. I'm going to share a few things that are up and coming that you were just talking about, some of this education coming their way. If it's okay with you, I'd like to let everybody know how much is happening in November. We have just coming up, even tomorrow, how to attract online shoppers during the holiday season with Marsha Hudson. We have Telling Stories, Everything You Need to Know with Lorna Kibbe on the 10th. And on the 11th, Mission Success for Veteran-Owned Businesses and Veteran Business Training by Rebecca Schultz, again, coming back. And on the 15th, Financial Negotiations Workshop, all business owners accepting loan offers. So there you have it with some of the upcoming things. You can also go to the QR code that is on this screen right now. It'll take you directly to our website to look for that training. And while you're on our website, you can also register for more webinars. You can get contact information or schedule an appointment with an advisor. We have a lot of different types of resources at the SBDC, including Size Up, one of our newest tools to use for young entrepreneurs as well as business owners and doing research. We are funded, and we'd like to thank a few people, especially the Small Business Administration, the state of Texas, North Texas SBDC Regional Office, and NCTC, North Central Texas College, for their efforts in funding us. We want to thank all of you for coming. We thank you, Liz, for joining us for the first time. We're so happy to see you and have you today.
Thank you for
And
having me.
And we hope that you will all join us with some of the upcoming webinars. And this will conclude this particular one. You guys have an amazing week.